In this lesson, we're going to have a look at the elevation in the section and how we can easily add color just to bring out the building and define where those edges are, so that we don't really have to go into the same amount of detail in terms of rendering any interior floor levels and all of that. We can basically do it in a much simpler way by leaving the entire building white and just rendering the soil that is being cut through and showing where the sky is, which will basically reveal the contour or the profile of the house. So that's what we're going to do in this lesson. I'm also going to show you a few extra tips and techniques that you can use in Photoshop that can also help you with your workflow. So the first thing that I'd like to do with this layer is that I'd like to start by defining where my outer boundary will be for the color that I'm going to add. So to do this, I'm going to use the help of guides, and that you can access by hitting Ctrl R on your keyboard, and that will show your rulers. Then from there, you can simply drag your cursor using the move tool from the outer edge where your ruler is into your page. So just go and start dragging these guides onto your page, and basically what I want to do here is to define the areas that are going to have color. So you could also come in and start to move any of your plans around. If you do need to move everything more left, you could take those CAD plans before you start doing any work, and we could just use the arrow keys on our keyboard just to move it slightly more into place. Perhaps it needs to be slightly higher, so just make sure that you get that layout looking perfect. Again, this is something that you can and probably should do in AutoCAD itself. So I'm going to continue making these guides. I'm going to do a few horizontal ones. This one will be to show us where the ground is stopping, and this one will be for the sky. We don't want those to touch, so that we do identify two separate drawings. And here we're going to do something roughly around there. So now that I have those guides in place, what that allows me to do, I can turn off my rulers as well, is that I can now use the rectangular marquee tool, and it's going to snap onto those guides. So I basically have that order being created. So let's go into the color group, and I'm going to make a new layer within that group. And into this, I'm now going to create a background sky. So I'm going to just use that entire shape, and I'm going to now, into this entire layer, just add a very, very light blue color. Now I'm just going to use the paint bucket and just drop that color in there. So the same thing can now be done to the lower one. We can either use the rectangular marquee tool, or we can just drag and shape that color in. So that is going to be the background color. What we're going to do now is we are going to add the color that is going to be used for the ground that is being cut through. So this one is going to be the sky. Also a good idea to keep the layers that are in the top half at the top of your stack and the bottom, so that you understand where they are located. So for the ground, we're going to just use the manual selection. I'm going to define that area relatively quickly. I should be more precise by zooming in and doing it slowly, but I just want to get the basic idea out to you. So once you have that done, you can then create a new layer there. And this will be quite a dark gray color since you're cutting through. Nothing really exciting about that. And the main thing is that that's going to give your drawing a lot of grounding. You can also decide whether you want to change where this location of the south elevation title is. You may want to not include that in the gray area. So you could also come in here and you could either stop your entire color over here, but what that would do is that you wouldn't then see the slope. So you could also just add a white underlay on top of that, like so, if you like. So this one is a little bit different because it is not really sloping down. So this perhaps doesn't look that great, but we can really focus on that slightly in a different time. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to define this area here. This is going to be a slope. So basically we want to show that that is sloping down. Again, I'm doing it quite quickly. And you just want to define that area. Here I think I need to cut it a little bit lower. So I'm just modifying the selection area and I'm just going to fine tune it a little bit. There. Now I'm going to create another new layer, and I'm going to make a lighter version of this, but also we can add a little bit of green, even though that's not the best color to use. You can add a tiny bit of green just to show that there is in fact a slope in that place. So now what you want to do is you want to delete the blue color where you have the house, so you can see whether it will work to actually use the special, or at least magic wand, the special wand, and you can select the outside and just see what result you get. Also, you can turn off your CAD grids, and you can see whether you can turn off anything else. Let's just go and turn off all of that, and you basically end up with this. We're going to invert that selection by hitting Ctrl-Shift-I on our keyboards, and that selected area is now going to get added to a mask that we can then invert, and that will now leave our entire building white. So now if we turn everything back on, you will see that I haven't even shaded the trees yet, or I may not even shade them at all. But basically the result is that you see the house as an individual outlined object. You can see exactly what the type of cantilevers are here. You can see what the profile is, and you really start to understand how this house is located on this edge of the slope and how far it's overhanging off that edge. So now it's up to you whether you want to add a green tone to these trees. The other thing that I can mention at this point is that it's a very good idea to have a look at the color scheme that you have working here and just look at the two drawings side by side. So already I can see that this drawing is much lighter, so you can either go the route of adding more deeper colors to this plan, or you can lighten the colors. So remember too that you can use the eyedropper tool and use similar shades from one plan so that the two plans do look similar and basically feed off each other when you have your presentation. So having all those plans next to each other, you don't want your tones to be different. You want your color scheme to be fairly regular and similar between the drawings so that they have that language. So pretty much I've shown you what needs to be done here. The only difference that I could recommend for this is that the area that you have on the inside, so let's just quickly go and select that so we can do that very quickly. I will use the magic wand, select that area, add the mask. And the only difference that I would recommend here is that you add some distinction between what is being cut through, in other words, the real section, and the portion which is being shown in the elevation. So one way that you could do it is that you could draw a custom line or a selection around what is not actually being cut through, and you could basically give that a slight color which is either similar to the sky. Let me just go across here and finish this. And you could either do a color which is similar to the sky here, like so. Let me just create a new layer for that. And you could fade that slightly so that you basically get a very, very light veil of color over it, but yet you see that it is part of the building, but you can see that it isn't exactly as bright as this section here. So you want to give this idea or this notion of depth. So if you don't like the idea of adding that light veil of blue, you can just add either white, or you can even just gray it out very lightly with a continuous flat color, leaving this part much whiter and brighter. So remember here as well that you want to use the same color that we used to shade our walls, and you will use that color to shade your slabs and all of the roof and floor and pool elements, so that you basically have those two colors matching between your drawings. So I'm not really going to do all of that in practice. I've basically talked through most of it. I think that you understand the principles already, and you pretty much will start getting a very coherent set of plans if you just follow the rules of matching your colors and having the same style in your plan and in your elevation. So the main thing here is just keep your palette limited. Focus on the object and don't add too much color, too much detail, or any of those heavy green and textured surfaces as we saw in that earlier presentation right at the beginning of this course. So I hope that gives you a clear idea of where to go. The last lesson is just going to touch on creating a title block that we can add to these drawings, and it will also just give a very short conclusion to wrap up our entire course here together.